I think I'm a Trump supporter now. After the Hunter Biden pardon, I really have come to realize that all politicians are probably just the same and they're all kind of corrupt and in it for themselves. And now I think I see what all the Trumpers were talking about, that maybe Trump really is the only hope we have to dismantle the deep state, take the power back for the people. Just recently, I heard that the Harris campaign was allegedly conspiring to submit false certificates of ascertainment to Congress, and that they were looking for people in key swing states to sign off on these false elector slates so that when they go to count the votes, they're going to take the votes from Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, the dutiful electors that Trump won, and they're going to submit the false Kamala electors instead, and that's how they're going to plan to declare Harris victory. And alleged co-conspirators include AOC, Rachel Maddow, and Merrick Garland, head of the DOJ. And I'm really glad that I was able to hear about this from investigative reporters and journalists like Glenn Greenwald and Matt Walsh. I'm really glad that they're able to kind of expose this before we get into a constitutional crisis, as they should be locked up and put in jail for that. It's really devastating. But of course, the kicker here is that all literally happened, and Trump literally tried to steal 2020. Trump and his cronies, Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell, literally had these false elector slates ready to go. And all that was left was for Trump to continue bullying Pence into going with the scheme and submitting the false electors on January 6th. That's what it was about. There's a reason that Mike Pence didn't run with him again in 2024. There's a reason they're not on speaking terms. And it's not because Pence is part of the deep state. All the while this was happening, Fox News decided to run with the big lie that mass and widespread voter fraud was happening, despite the fact that all of their on-air talent and journalists and reporters, everyone behind the scenes, and they were exchanging texts as such, admitting to it, that they knew their claims were false, that they knew what Powell and Giuliani were saying were BS. And they ended up having to settle the biggest defamation lawsuit of all time for $787 million to Dominion Voting Systems for alleging that they were changing Trump votes to Biden votes. And the crazy thing is that 4 years later, no one seems to care. They just continue to lie with impunity because it's so fucking lucrative. And if they end up having to pay another settlement, it'll just be a drop in the bucket for what they make just lying repeatedly. So my actual feeling on the Hunter Biden pardon is anyone saying, see, I told you both sides are so corrupt, or this just gives even more permission for Trump to break norms. Just spare me the pearl clutching. It's not a time for both sidesing and false equivalencies. I can't stand it anymore. It's just infuriates me. I feel like this is one of the few times where Biden's actually shown some spine. And I read the statement he put out, and I believe him when he said he changed his mind when the situation changed. I think it's pretty clear to anyone that observes the facts of the Hunter Biden case that if his last name was anything but Biden, he would have been treated differently. He probably would have gotten a fine and a plea deal, or a reduced sentence, not a felony charge for lying on a gun form. Imagine if I bought Taylor Swift tickets with my girlfriend to go see her concert. And then imagine if the relationship changed and I decided I wanted to break up and I sold the ticket to a friend. I'm not a hypocrite or a liar for saying that I was going to Taylor Swift. Just the situation changed. And so too, I think, with Biden. Now, I'll caveat this with the fact that if we lived in a respectable political climate, if it was Harris versus Nikki Haley or Mitt Romney or some respectable Republican, then I would criticize Joe Biden for being selfish and putting his personal interests above the party and country. I would advocate for limits to the presidential pardon. I don't even think that presidents should have that power in the first place to pardon family and friend. But I'm not going to waste another fucking second of oxygen on this when the right defends Trump's pardons and then he gives his family ambassadorships. So I just want you to sit with me and imagine some of the double standard scenarios. What do you think would have happened if Harris didn't concede the next day? What do you think would have happened if Clinton didn't concede the next day? Imagine if Biden was using Putin and Viktor Orban as his character references while he was running the campaign. Imagine if CNN and MSNBC, after Kamala lost, imagine if they were running wall-to-wall coverage of widespread voter fraud without any evidence. Here's the stark reality. When both Trump assassination attempts happened, all of the Democratic officials unequivocally condemned political violence. There were no jokes, there were no smirks, there were no dismissals. I'm not talking about Twitter idiots. I'm talking about the officials. And I just want you to contrast that with Trump's comments on Paul Pelosi.
And we'll stand up to crazy Nancy Pelosi who ruined San Francisco. How's her husband doing, by the way? Anybody know? And she's against building a wall at our border, even though she has a wall around her house, which obviously didn't do a very good job.
The two parties are locked in an abusive relationship, and one party lies, cheats, and gaslights. The other party is trying to cling to some semblance of integrity, and they go, "Oh, I just slipped down the stairs. My black eye's not that bad. I can fix them, I swear. I just have to get a little bit better at cooking." Like, fuck that. Normally, when something gets this bad, you just suggest a breakup. You move on, you start over, you find someone healthier. But I don't really see that as an option here. The difference is democracy doesn't have a pre-written ending. I don't think you can just opt out or secede from the union. I don't think you can just stay single. I think you have to stay engaged and participate. It's a messy, imperfect system, and you still gotta show up. I think it means holding bad actors accountable. It means you don't settle for the excuse that both sides are bad to let things slide. I also think it means recognizing that people are products of their environment. I have a lot of friends and family that voted for or supported Trump, and I don't 100% blame them. I acknowledge the fact that if I grew up with similar social incentives or the media bubbles that they grew up in, I'd probably make a lot of the same decisions and support Trump. But understanding this doesn't mean acceptance, and it doesn't mean silence. I think it just means you have to fight the information war. You have to pick and choose your battles. And you don't have to stoop to the level of lies and propaganda and ad homs. You can do this well. I think you have to be able to fact check relentlessly. You have to be able to call out falsehoods and shallow thought and jumping to conclusions, and especially when it comes to your allies. You have to be consistent in applying your principles and criticism and be able to admit to your mistakes and blind spots so that you can gain some credibility. You have to raise the standards for your own behavior and be a model for what you want to see in the world. You have to make your bed and clean your room. And you have to demand better from your media and leaders. And yeah, it's not glamorous. It's not going to give you the regular dopamine hit that you're used to. And a lot of the time it's going to feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall, or you're going to be screaming into the void. But the very fact that bots and trolls and disinformation campaigns exist means that your voice matters. There's a reason that foreign adversaries strive to manipulate and plague the public discourse just to destroy your faith. Advocating for complex solutions to complex problems can be exhausting. It's infinitely harder than shouting slogans or picking scapegoats, but that's the price of engaging with reality. It's the price of building something better. And the US isn't alone. There's a lot of other Western countries out there that are facing the same populist uprisings. Oppositions that lean heavily on buzzwords and outrage and slogans that don't really offer any real substance to the complex issues we face. But the answer to these problems is never disengagement and apathy and just waiting for the world to burn down. You can build your bunker if you want, but I'm not here to talk to you. All I really want is for real flesh and blood humans, people that care about the future, to stay engaged. I want them to stand and hold fast to their principles and values and not flip at the first sign of difficulty. Democracy is not just a system to be taken for granted. It's also not the natural state of humanity. We had to do a lot of learning and fighting to obtain and maintain it. It's going to be one that we pass down to the next generation for better or worse, whether we like it or not. So, yeah, like the pardon shouldn't make you feel great. But it doesn't mean you retreat and check out. It means you fucking grimace and move forward.